Welcome to another episode of the Learner's Mindset Discussion. I'm Dr. Dwayne Harapnik, and my colleague is...
Dr. Talissa Thibodeau.
Today we're going to be exploring ePortfolios. What are they? What are they used for? No, what I mean is, what are they really used for? They're often used for one thing, but we often don't really take advantage of what they could potentially do. We often use them as a container that we dump digital resources into, but what can we use them for that goes well beyond a digital container? What does a good ePortfolio look like? I don't know if we'll be able to get to that one today because I think we've got a lot to talk about, but so this is a starting point. ePortfolios can be an amazing tool. They have become identified as what the 11th high impact practice by a learning consortium. And if used well, they can make a wonderful difference in people's lives. The challenge is, and what we've seen in the research, and we've seen this with the ABLE Association, this is sort of the world's foremost group on ePortfolios, is that we're really not using ePortfolios very well. So how do we fix that? How do we use ePortfolios well? What are your thoughts, Dr. Thibodeau?
I was thinking about the former president of ABLE Association, Trent Batson, when he said, if ePortfolios are so great, why aren't more people using them? He refers to that as the Edinburg Challenge, or Edinburgh Challenge, however you say it. But I think that ePortfolios are sometimes compartmentalized. It's an assessment ePortfolio, or I use it as an online resume, or or I use it just to reflect. But what about pulling all of those pieces together? In terms of sharing your disposition and watching, and sharing your digital presence, who you are, and letting the world have access to you, and sharing your ideas and connecting and collaborating. So I think if we move away from this, ePortfolios are a certain thing and they can only be that way, or folio thinking, where it's just about writing and that's all. But if we pull all of that together, it becomes an experience. And that's what is truly, I think, can be truly transformative for people, is pulling all of the pieces together on an EP and sharing that out and collaborating with peers. What do you think? What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think it really can be a powerful, transformative experience, along the lines of what Mesereau talks about in terms of people finding their voice and being able to use that metacognitive, reflective experience to be able to go into deeper understanding and learning, transformational learning. Yes, they can be there, or the ePortfolios can be used for that. But I think a challenge that we're facing was highlighted this past summer when I was attending the ABLE conference um, uh, in North Vancouver at Capilano University. And in one of the major not the breakout sessions, but one of the plenary sessions, a group of researchers were taking a look at one of the biggest challenges that they were facing. And that is getting learners to really engage in taking that ownership and doing something that was meaningful, using the ePortfolio for more than just a container. And through that whole process, and I've been going to these conferences for years, and I've been looking at the research for years, a few of the people were starting to realize that one of the big challenges that they were facing as the instructors is that students are only going to put into the ePortfolio stuff that they are required to put in. And if they aren't doing things that are meaningful, significant in the courses that they're taking, well, then all you're going to get is a repository for a digital assignment, for an essay, for presentation they've created. So one of the presenters was lamenting the fact that in the capstone session, they weren't getting the type of use that they could potentially get. And all the way along in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, the challenge is that the ePortfolio isn't the problem. The problem is that we often aren't asking our students to do anything that is meaningful and significant. And so when we ask them to reflect on something that really has no meaning in their lives other than the assignment, all we're going to get is this cursorial, superficial level of reflection on something because it isn't meaningful. But if we switch what we do, if we create those significant learning environments where we do give our learners choice, ownership, and voice through that authentic learning opportunity, if it's real, if the student owns the experience, if they're working on a real project, a real service learning project, if they're making a difference in their community, in the world around them, in their classroom, in their school, in their place of business, if they're actually doing something that has meaning, well, guess what? The ePortfolio reflection that we all want and that we all identify as a gold standard then becomes attainable. So it's once again an example of we've got the technology, we've got the tools, we've got the ability, but it comes back to setting up the learning. If we don't set up the learning right, the best tools are actually useless because it goes back to that meaningful learning experience that the student owns. So that's the challenge. ePortfolios can mean something very significant if the learning is significant. What do you think? Am I being too idealistic here?
I don't think so, because what you describe reminds me of a former student in our master's in digital learning and leading who said, I don't want the ePortfolio to become a repository that collects e-dust. Instead, this same student turned around and connected his passion to his purpose in his ePortfolio. And instead of just using the ePortfolio as somewhere to just showcase as a repository, he actually wrote his own job description instead of just using it as an online resume. I see folks compartmentalize their ePortfolios as an online resume, but it can be so much more than that. So when I think about working with some of the other students that I work with on campus, connecting their passion and what they are to their purpose. So the work that they're doing, the authentic work that they're doing and learning in their programs, and being able to put that on their ePortfolio, share their ideas with each other, collaborate, and connect with people in a way they would not have otherwise been able to connect. ePortfolio allows that. But my question is, why don't folks always take the opportunity to do that? Why do we sometimes get caught up in, okay, let me just, post this here? And I think it kind of goes back to what you mentioned before. If we're not setting up a learning environment that our learners have choice, ownership, and voice, and they're not working on something authentic, it is very easy for them to just see it as a container. So to get them to shift, we have to focus on those opportunities that they can reflect, expand, and use what they're learning and share that out in a meaningful way. It goes back to that meaningful way that you discussed, and it goes back to the learning as well. How are we setting up those significant learning environments? That might be a really good topic for our next LMD, going down that path.
Yeah, I think we do need to go down that path, but I want to address what you talked about, or the question why is there that tendency to sort of fall back into using it as a container? I'm going to go back to the instructional design, and I have the privilege right now of working with a capstone class of students in the DLL program. So these are the students who are working on their final course, and in that final course, they are pulling together their ePortfolio. They're presenting their COVA reflection. They're looking at their presentation of their innovation project. Where are they so far, and pulling the pieces together, and then that whole final synthesis piece. And so they're really working on their ePortfolio. Some of the students have spent a lot of time building and working, and so at the end it's just a matter of tweaking things that will be important to them, and so it's quite easy. Others haven't, but something came up under this discussion on Monday, or actually yesterday, that I think is very significant. And even in the DLL program, we have built the environment, the significant learning environment, where we give students choice, ownership, and voice through authentic learning opportunities. And through all of our courses, students for the most part do focus on connecting what it is that they're doing in that course to their major project. But in these students happen to go through one of our courses that is a little bit more content focused. It follows some of the foundational ideas, and it has a project component to it, but it is a little bit more content heavy. And when you are simply asking students to give you content back, it's not meaningful. And so in that particular course, they didn't do anything other than sort of the final week compilation. But even then, it was just sort of, it's a container where we put stuff. So it goes back to the instructional design. It goes back to that course design or that learning design. If we're asking our students to just give us content back, well then, guess what? The ePortfolio simply becomes a container if the
Yeah.
students even bother to use it as a container. It doesn't become meaningful. One of the students said, "Yeah, it's really too bad. You know, I seem to have fallen out of practice over the last 5, 6 weeks because I haven't really been posting, and now that I haven't posted, you know, see, I'm out of rhythm. I'm out of rhythm." So, you know, we spend all that time getting students into the rhythm of posting on a weekly basis, and all it takes is sort of one circumstance where they fall out of that rhythm, and then it's like any habit. You stop going to the gym for a few days or a week, and then 1 week leads to two, and two leads to a month, and then, you know, before you know it, you're on the couch eating potato chips and drinking Coca-Cola. Well, I don't know if it's that bad, but
Oh, it just made me think of a couple of things. So, great example. And the example I started thinking of when you started talking about rhythm, I started thinking of collecting the dots versus connecting the dots. So if we're just collecting the dots, it's easy to collect that content and put it onto the ePortfolio. But when we're connecting the dots, this is where the ePortfolio really makes it a viable option to have a transformative experience, because you are reflecting, sharing, collaborating, producing. And as you're writing and revising and restructuring and working through your voice and learning, you know, where you are with your innovation plans and how you're going to influence other people and how you're going to set up your significant learning environment, if that is what you're doing, you're thinking and reflecting and posting. So I think ePortfolio, if we engage it that way, and we actually do in our program, folks get into the rhythm. It's kind of like playing the piano. You know, a single isolated note is all on its own. Boom, boom, boom. You can actually push any note anywhere, sharp, you know, flat, but you can get into the rhythm by playing a song, right?
yeah.
And so that's where the dots come together when we say collect the dots versus connect the dots. And so I was thinking about that as you were talking. I was thinking about my former experience as a piano player. Played piano for 5 years, and nothing really sounded good when it was just bing, 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 bing. But when I pulled it all together, then I was able to, you know, and it takes time. It takes a little time to get used to that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get that because our folks in ePortfolio, they need a little time to get adjusted to that. And as they start doing it more and more and more, the rhythm starts picking up. So thank you for helping me think of that in my head. You made
Well,
that very
actually, it was one of our students. I can't remember who it was. I'll have to go back to the recording of the session and see who mentioned that. But they did talk about that rhythm, and in the same way that you have, and that it's so easy to fall out of the rhythm. And this sort of reminds me of a conversation we had with another one of our students who is an IT director in his school, and he's in our program, and he's recognizing that, you know, just getting the technology in the teacher's hands is only part of the puzzle. um, Recognizing that if you don't create a significant learning environment where that technology is used to enhance learning, well then quite often all you're going to use that technology for is a digital worksheet or the digital container if we talk about the ePortfolio context we have. And so it's so easy to fall back into that standardized way of giving the information back, right? Delivering the content back, or showing, yes, I've got the content, you gave it to me, here, I massaged my version of the content and I put it in this container, and so there, I've got the content. I show you I have the content. Oh, good, I get my mark. Well, you're right. That's just an example of collecting the dots.
Mhm.
But the rhythm of connecting the dots is where we get that deeper learning. And that's, boy, you know, we've got an idea for another article or a book here. You know, the rhythm of learning. Wow, interesting. Or that might be a chapter in one of our other books coming up. So it is interesting. It once again, think about it. We're talking about technology and ePortfolio. It's a digital container if you use it as a digital container. But if you go beyond just that digital containerness and you recognize, no, it's a tool that we can use that can help a learner to not only find their voice,
Mhm.
but to establish that voice and develop it and build it to the point that it really helps them to transform their own understanding and their own learning. So again, it's a tool, and if used properly, can do some amazing things. So we've got the potential, got the potential.
When I've taught the capstone in previous sections, I've noticed that sometimes folks are uncomfortable in the beginning sharing their voice, or they didn't even know they had a voice. But through sharing, collaborating, discussing, sharing, putting their work out there a little bit, they start to get a little confidence and continue doing that. So, we've actually conducted some research about ePortfolio persistence, and I won't go into that because that could be an entire other learner's mindset discussion conversation there. But we noticed that students that are given an opportunity to share their voice in their own authentic way, choice over their ePortfolio platform, control over the things that are important to them, authentic and meaningful work from their courses, and not just respond to these two questions, but actual applied learning that they can take and build on their ePortfolio and then share that in their own organizations. Okay, I built this presentation and I'm working on this and I want to share this with my grade level, and then I want to expand this to my team, and then I want to expand this to my school. This gives them the opportunity to do that. And what's great is all of their classmates have access to their links. They share comments, they discuss about it, they help each other, they collaborate, they build a community practice almost in that way, in their own way, around sharing, networking, and building out their ideas. So, I think going back to the piano example, it's like, if you're playing Amazing Grace, or you're playing some song on the piano, whatever that may be, Chariots of Fire, who knows what that is. You miss a note somewhere, it might make the sound of the song completely off. But if you engage all of the notes the way that, that is meant for the song to be played, you get the full impact, the full, so you don't want to, miss those little nuggets of greatness along the way. I mean, I remember my mom playing when I was younger, and she missed a note, she would stop and start over. You know what? That's the best thing about ePortfolio. You can edit and delete and iterate as you go. You don't have to stop and start over.
Yeah.
You know, and so anyway, just a few of my thoughts as you were talking.
Well, again, I'm going to go back to our student example. In the same class or meeting last night, another student who was quite sophisticated in her technology use, and we were talking about the ePortfolio and what they need to do in the capstone, and where we're going, or what we're doing as we go forward, or what they do as they go forward. And she had mentioned that this ePortfolio experience was quite transformative for her, and she talked a little bit about it. And then she also put this in chat. I've created an ePortfolio for this business. I've created an ePortfolio for this organization. Not ePortfolio. I've created a website here, built a website for this, done a website for that. But the ePortfolio I've done in this course, it's my ePortfolio. The M and the Y were capitalized. It's my ePortfolio. It makes all the difference in the world, right? The ownership is so significant. And we go back to the example of connecting the dots and playing music and finding that rhythm, and the rhythm that these students find in terms of their ePortfolio. That final composition is full, is rich, and reflects their learning, their understanding, right? And it's really quite exciting, and I can hardly wait to read their final synthesis, because I this is so common when we take a look at this, is that there's going to be a realization point where these learners go, wow, look at what I accomplished. Look at what I built. Look at what I have. Look at what I'm able to do. Look at what's happening in my learning environment. Look at my innovation plan. We've got this blended learning environment. We've got, all these students in high school now in English are using, and social are using ePortfolios of their own. They're creating, they're finding their voice. So these students reflect back on their activities, or the makerspace that we built in the library now is going to be expanded to other places. Because all the innovation plans are so radically different, but they get that reflection that it's mine, and they own it, and there's that pride of ownership. And I think And you know what? It doesn't matter how melodic or how rhythmic the ePortfolio is. It doesn't matter. And you mentioned something else that's extremely important. It can be changed, it can be improved. And what I am seeing, the students who really buy into the notion that they own it are always looking at, oh, I've got to fix that part of my portfolio. I've got to improve that part. So it isn't just a container where I'm putting stuff. When the learners are thinking, oh, I want to improve that, I want to add this, I want to shape this, they're looking at ways that they can actually make this learning space more effective. In the same ways that, if I were to, every time my wife walks into a store, a furniture store or something, she's envisioning how she can actually shape and mold our learning space or our living space in a different way, right? So that ePortfolio becomes this space, your space that you can shape and mold and present in a variety of different ways. So it's exciting if it's used properly. But again, it goes back to that notion, that you have to create that environment where that WordPress, that Wix, that Weebly, that tool, that digital tool moves from being a digital container to being a tool of the learner's voice, and a tool that is not just about capturing their voice, but it'll magnify their voice and
Okay.
allow them to show it and present it in a much more significant way.
Ah, I kept thinking back, but going back to my piano example again, because every time you talk, I think of something else. A piano player's fingers, they learn how to hit keys just the right way to expand that section, that sound. When you play Chariots of Fire, it's strong. In the very beginning, it's powerful. It almost sounds like a storm's rolling in, right? But a piano player's keys, they know how to expand and evoke emotion from people and passion, just by hitting a key, a certain way. And that connects, so that connects back to people's passion a little bit, kind of affects people. So as people are building, and to bridge the connection of what I'm trying to say here, when people are building their e-portfolios, when there's passion behind it, and they're actually, they're key points, they're revising, they're restructuring, they're connecting their passion to their purpose in life. And aren't we helping folks prepare for life? And this is one way to do that. So when I think about a piano player and running their keys, certain keys are light, certain are dainty. Then they go back and they hit it with the passion. So I see students who have ePortfolio posts, the blog posts on their EPs, and they'll make certain words larger. They want that key point to stand out, or they'll change and highlight the text, or they'll italic certain part of the text to make that part stand out, or they'll insert a 1-minute video clip to maximize what they're trying to say. There's the passion behind what they're saying is right there. So it shouldn't be hard to find if they are putting the passion into it. If not, it may be simple as, let me just use the upload scribed or Crocodoc and just upload, but I can't see it when they do that. So that's difficult. So you see the passion behind the fingers whenever folks are really pouring into their EP.
Yeah, and I think we've got to be careful that we don't keep on repeating the same point, or I have to be careful I don't keep on repeating the same point, in the sense that that passion, we as instructors, as instructional designers, as people who create that learning environment, we have the ability to quench that passion by what we ask our learners to do. If
Mm-hmm.
we give our learners choice, ownership, and voice through something that's real, that authentic learning opportunity, well, guess what? That passion that ignites that voice, that ignites the ability to bring together those ideas that they can emphasize, and they can find their rhythm. If we give them that ability to take ownership, well, then the passion flows. But if we simply ask them to regurgitate information, we're kind of quenching that passion. Not kind of, I think we are.
Yeah.
And if I can sort of refer to Ken Robinson, we have learners who are presenting their ideas, and we have that ability to, you know, um, or he cautions us to tread softly, right, on those ideas, and to be careful, and to actually do things that help to pull those ideas out, to pull out those passions, to pull out those desires. And again, it goes back to our design, our learning design. If we create that environment where the student takes ownership, they can do something real that's theirs, the passion follows. So
I
yeah,
want to creativity before it's even started.
yeah. Listen, I think we've hit some of the key points here. Passion, creativity, rhythm, learning, depth of learning, the transformative learning, it's all within our grasp if we design the right type of environment, right? And that ePortfolio becomes just one of many tools that we can use to magnify that student's voice. So I see the ePortfolio almost as an amplifier on our musical our musical analogy. So yeah, interesting. So the question is, are we amplifying, or are we creating that environment where students can amplify their voice? So, or are we creating that environment where the students can even find their voice? Because they're not going to find their voice if they're just regurgitating content, regurgitating information. And why bother? Why bother? There's no voice to be found if you're just giving something back. But if
Right.
it's yours, if you own it, if it has significance to you, it will make a difference. So again, it goes back to the design. We have the ability to really make a difference in people's lives. And it goes back to what we've been saying all along. We have the ability to change the world one learner at a time if we allow that learner to grow, to experiment, to be creative. That means we've got to let go a little bit. So ePortfolios, a good ePortfolio environment, and if you're building ePortfolios, or if you've got a situation where you want your students to use ePortfolios, guess what? You got to let go. It's got to be theirs. And again, not spending too much time in our research, but our research confirms that if they own it and if they can actually find their voice through the assignments, it can make all the difference in the world. Wonderful tool. Can be a high impact practice if it's used right.
Yep.
I think we're on the right track.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think that might be enough of our discussion on ePortfolios, because we want to stop while we're ahead before we start moving into maybe a sports analogy, which is going to fall apart. So I think we'll stick with the music analogy and the ePortfolios as a tool to amplify the learner's voice. So wonderful discussion. Looking forward to talking to you a bit more about some of the other ideas that we need to deal with on the ePortfolio. Wonderful potential, as always. Thank you so much.